I'm Dustin Cormier, and this is the How to Rock Astrology audio series. The information in this recording is copyrighted by Dustin Cormier, 2015, all rights reserved, except where noted in the recording. The following information on ascendant or rising signs comes from Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook, copyrighted in 1989 by Stephen Arroyo, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. I do not own the following content. Guidelines to interpreting the ascendant. Although the ascendant is of deep and pervasive importance for each individual, there is no denying that it must be related to the rest of the chart, and especially to the sun sign, in order to understand it thoroughly for a particular person. The sun, after all, is the core identity, the very center of the consciousness, the way we assimilate much of our experience, whereas the ascendant, although it varies in importance from person to person, is not as central to the person's nature. It shows, among other things, the approach to life, but the sun shows life itself. The ascendant must serve the purposes, values, and creative goals of the sun for the individual to function happily and fully. A useful tool for understanding how a person's ascendant and sun sign interact is to compare the elements of the two factors. For example, a Cancer sun sign person with a fire sign rising is usually far more extroverted, forcefully expressive, and confident than a Cancer sun individual with, say, a more conservative, self-protective earth sign rising. For another example, an air sign sun person with a water sign rising may appear much more emotional than he or she really is, whereas a water sign sun person with an air sign rising may appear far more detached and less emotional than he or she really is. It should be pointed out that people are often relatively unaware of their ascendant nature as compared to their sun sign. In that sense, the ascendant is a factor that can be consciously developed further over time and consciously utilized to aid one's self-expression. I've known people who are relieved to find what their rising signs were, since it finally gave them a way of identifying a very deep but only semi-conscious tendency in themselves. In some cases, the qualities and abilities symbolized by the ascendant were just beginning to emerge, and learning the astrological keys to this factor helped personal development greatly. I should emphasize here that perhaps more than with most other factors in the chart, the early environment can encourage or suppress the expression of the ascendant's energies, since it is a primary channel with which one interacts with the outer world. The reader should view the following comparative evaluations as guidelines and as questions to explore, rather than as rigid statements of absolute truth. Cancer modality or quadruplicity. The Cancer modality is cardinal, the active energy mode. There are exactly 4 of these active signs in the zodiac belonging to the cardinal modality. These include Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, and they all share similar characteristics. The 4 cardinal signs exhibit more restlessness than the other 8 signs. There's a sense of, I've got to do something, and a tendency to be enamored by activity for activity's sake. These active signs share the challenge of identifying the source of their behavior. Are they motivated by true inspiration, or are they rushing around because they feel like the crap's going to hit the fan? Or maybe they're trying to avoid feeling lazy and unproductive. The element of the ascendant. The element of the ascendant reveals the quality of energy flow directly vitalizing the physical body and the overall approach to life. Fire or air signs rising tend to conduct energy, encouraging active self-expression and dynamic expenditure of energy. Earth or water rising signs tend to conserve and resist the flow of vital energies, and hence indicate self-containment, sometimes self-repression, and the tendency of living within oneself. Water signs rising, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. Most easily influenced by the environment and by other people. Sensitive, moody, wary because of a strong feeling of vulnerability and likelihood of being hurt. Protective of self, but also of others one cares about. Sympathetic, feels others' emotions immediately and forcefully. Very private, lives deeply within oneself. Cancer ascendant. A sympathetic, mild demeanor, but the sensitivity and sympathy are often directed just as much toward oneself as toward others, often being oversensitive to hurts and slights. In this sense, Cancer rising seems to exhibit a more superficial type of empathy for others than Cancer sun, whose feelings tend to go deeper and whose sentiment is more personally touching. Cancer ascendant often seems even more reserved and private than the Cancer sun person, who, by virtue of his or her great acting ability, can often seem quite social and outgoing. The Cancer rising person is usually a strong introvert, although I have seen cases where the moon was in Leo or a similar extroverted sign, and the more outward-oriented tendencies were predominant. The following information comes from Isabel Hickey's classic text, Astrology, A Cosmic Science, copyrighted in 1992 by Isabel M. Hickey Trust, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. I do not own the following content. Cancer on the Ascendant. Timid and quiet, especially in early life. Sensitive and retreats when threatened. Fond of traveling, but must always have a home base from which to operate. Sympathetic, receptive, passive, and psychic. Responds to life through feeling, not thinking. Moods changeable, up and down like the tides. Easily upset, but does not stay disturbed for long. Note the sign the moon is in and its aspects. If the moon is angular, meaning the 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th house, the individual will be involved with the public mass consciousness in some way. A tendency to indigestion when emotionally disturbed. The solar plexus reaction upsets the juices of the stomach. The following information comes from The Secrets of Your Rising Sign by William Lamb with Webb Harris, Jr., copyrighted by William Lamb in 2004, first published in the USA by Fairwinds Press in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I do not own the following content. He's the willing worker. Thin-skinned and sensitive, with a gentle demeanor, cautious Cancer is always politic and found often working long hours in public places, taking advantage of an ability to avoid giving offense. People with Cancer rising get the job done in a utilitarian, worker-bee fashion. As children, they love to earn and stash money, and even in youth, they have a penchant for saving rather than spending. Cancer children are usually industrious, sensitive, cautious about almost everything, and quite loving toward their mothers. Sentimentality towards the past helps these folks learn from their experience, but sometimes leaves them emotionally inhibited, hesitant to embrace today's opportunities. In these cases, they live in the past rather than learn from it. They make themselves scarce if faced with rejection, but are cagey when threatened and skilled at avoiding intensity. They can be very non-committal. Don't fence me in, don't back me into a corner. Physical type. Short shuffle in the walk, sometimes poor eyesight. Favored colors. Olive green, forest green, smoky gray, silver. The following information comes from Isabel Hickey's Astrology, A Cosmic Science, copyrighted in 1992 by Isabel M. Hickey Trust, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. The significance of the Sun and the Sun sign in astrology. The symbol of the Sun in astrology is a circle with a dot in the middle. This is a very deep occult spiritual symbolism. The circle represents the eternal self that did not start here and does not finish here on earth. The dot in the middle represents the divine spark at the center of every living cell, the light which lighteth every man which cometh into the world. It is the point of light at the center of every living cell. In the blueprint, the sun represents the main expression of the individual, the heart and core of beingness. The sun has a different effect on individuals born at different times of the year. According to the sign and house in which the sun is placed, we are able to judge the general vitality and physique, the qualities of leadership, and the individual's ability to succeed in life. In a personal chart, the sun represents the basic drive for significance, the will, male relationships and female charts, especially with the father, vital energy coming from the etheric levels and prana, fuel on which the total personality operates, urge for power, constitutional strength, and finally, a powerful sun means very great power to do and to be. Keywords of the sun: will, individuality, spirit. The sun is the significator of the spirit in man, the beingness or isness of life. It rules the basic drive for significance, the will to be. Physically, the sun is the sustainer of life, giver of light, heat, and energy. More than anything else in the chart, it shows the will, man's highest expression. Its aspects show deep character traits, the chief ambitions. It needs aspects to the planets for strength of expression in the horoscope. As the sun moves through the signs, its return to the sign of its exaltation, Aries, the eastern horizon, marks the beginning of the astrological year. Springtime brings the release of a new cycle of life. As the sun moves through the houses, its return to the eastern horizon is the beginning of the astrological day, sunrise. The sun sign in its element. The following information comes from Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook, copyrighted in 1989 by Stephen Arroyo, published by CRCS Publications in Sebastopol, California. I do not own the following content. The sun sign's element is usually dominant in considering the overall psychology of a person. This is so because the sun sign's element reveals the attunement of one's basic vitality, identity, and power of self-projection, as well as the fundamental quality of his or her consciousness. The element of one's sun sign reveals the basic inner force motivating everything we do. The element of the sun sign also gives insight into how any individual sees life itself and what expectations they have of the life experience. Sagittarius Sun. Sagittarius is a fire sign. These are the common characteristics of people born with the sun in fire signs. Basically motivated by inspirations and aspirations. Recharges energy through vigorous, physically demanding activity and by pursuing new visions for the future. Interpretive guidelines for the sun in Pisces. Creative energy is expressed sensitively and inspirationally. Needs to be recognized for compassionate, giving nature. Sense of individuality is not clearly focused due to empathy with lives and problems of others. Radiates a healing and compassionate spirit toward all that suffers. Vitality and self-expression are colored by soul yearnings, overwhelming vulnerability, and the state of the inner life. This final article comes from The Secrets of Your Rising Sign by William Lamb with Webb Harris, Jr., copyrighted by William Lamb in 2004, first published in the USA by Fair Winds Press in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I do not own the following content. Pisces born early afternoon. Pisces with Cancer rising. So much depends on how wisely objective these people are about themselves and their circumstances. There's usually a lot of totally subjective, watery emotion here that can quickly turn in on itself. So if they're unable to stand off and see themselves in context, they're apt to be too influenced by the opinions of others. Pisceans with Cancer rising are some of the most unassuming, gentle-hearted people on the planet. They're very involved in the lives of their loved ones. Family is all important to them, and nurturing loved ones is usually their number one priority. And they're extremely industrious. When Cancer's willing worker kicks in, everyone within shouting distance is well fed and bedded down comfortably. These Pisceans are buzzsaws on the job, and after hours and on weekends, they apply the same energy and industriousness to sniffing out bargains and wheedling good deals. Cancer's thrifty nickel is in full bloom here. They use the shrewdness of Pisces and the caginess of cautious Cancer to come at things sideways, getting what they want in the cleverest of ways. They're superb at letting people think they're up to one thing when they're really up to something else. Reading their motives can be a challenge. But their light touch is so inoffensive. They're not scorpion dangerous, but a crab will still pinch you. Nonetheless, they're beloved in the neighborhood because they have the greatest garage sales and their soup bowl is big enough to feed everyone. They're sometimes painfully aware of the necessities of life, so they save everything. Their attics are bulging with things they're fully convinced will be of use in the future. And if not, they'll give the stuff to some poor family, or sell it at the garage sale. But it's Pisces' fear of disapproval and Cancer's fear of rejection that sometimes gets the best of them. They have a hard time being straightforward with their opinions and might cave in immediately after finally mustering the courage to speak their minds. In these cases, they do put their cards on the table. When the other party asks, "Is that so?" they back off with, "Well, maybe I overstated things." These Pisceans need to avoid being wimpy and stand their ground. They're too easily let others lean on them unhealthily, and often take people under their wing who don't make a contribution of their own. When this happens, they end up as enablers rather than the helping hand. They need to realize that if these people continue to perpetuate the same bad behavior, all they're doing with their help is throwing good energy after bad. Sooner or later, resentment sets in and they break the cycle. But the better strategy is to avoid these situations in the first place by being more discriminating in their judgment and more objective in their relationships. Pisceans born early afternoon deserve recognition and gratitude for their wonderfully gentle efforts, their endless contributions, and their common decency. They really need to be appreciated for their delicate, nurturing nature, and they deserve the same emotional support they so willingly give to others. The key here is objectivity and a willingness to stand their ground. Because these kind-hearted, industrious worker bees reap their rewards the old-fashioned way, they earn them.